we want to do for education for the chapter from now forward, and especially in the subject of revenue management. So, you know, when I opened, I talked about the importance of collaboration and the importance of conversions, and we know it's important for the topic of conversions with digital marketing and with revenue management. But there's a little story I'll tell really quickly, Loren. Little story. So HSMAI's got something called the Certified Hospitality Business Acumen Certification. And it's a serious senior level look at running a hotel, putting in seed in a simulation product for running a hotel for a 3-year cycle. And in the first ones we did live, now we do a lot of it online, but in the first ones I was partnered. I went down to see about it with our partnership with Red Global, who was our simulation partner, and I went down to see about it, and he said, you need to go through it, so I'm going to partner you with somebody randomly in the group, and he'll partner you with for 3 days, right? So for 3 days. So I sat down on the first morning, and my partner was Loren Gray. I never met Loren before, and after the first day, I never wanted to see him again. So we had a shared computer. He was the keyboard first. He would listen to anything I had to say, no contribution to any of the decisions. At the end of the day, they do a comp set with the group in the room, and of course, it's a very competitive group. We were what, Loren?
Dead last.
Dead last, right? But we still didn't want to talk to each other. So we didn't have a drink that night. We did the next day. My turn at the keyboard. I made my decisions. I was a sales marketing professional more at that time. I made my decisions. Loren tried to inject his thinking, and I thought, not this time, Buster. So I made the decisions. And at the end of the day, where were we, Loren?
Dead last.
Dead last. True. So the third day, well, that night, we reluctantly had a drink and had dinner, right? I mean, we weren't excited about it, but we did it because we were really mad about being last, right? We really were mad. So we talked about the strategy. The next day, every time we made a decision, we talked about it. We took some of his advice, we took some of my advice. This is really true. Some of mine and everything else. And at the end of the day, when it came time for who was the top producing hotel in that competitive set,
we wouldn't kick everybody's butt the entire session.
Yeah, we did. So we won. And, you know, okay, message. Important to convergence, right? Important to hear data from different perspectives to make decisions collaboratively, right? So we learned an important lesson, and we've been really great friends ever since. So when you see this little slide here, and I don't know exactly what videos you're going to show today. This is Loren's mind over here on the left side. I've never seen it go to the right side. And see if you agree when he finishes. So, Loren Gray.
Thank you very much, Brad. It is true. I don't think the hardest part for me is starting because I have like 20 million things I want to start with, and I bless Jenny. She lets me go over and change my deck until I get here. Because normally, you know, you hand your deck up and you're supposed to have it presented and so forth. And I've changed it 10 times in the back as conversations came up and questions came up. Which leads me to ask this. First off, it's very much a privilege to be able to speak with the audience today. Who's in the audience, the talent that's in the audience. I've never been this humbled in front of an audience except for, say, when I was in New York with HSMAI out there, because what I'm about to offer you puts me very vulnerable as to how successful my conversation with you will go. And it is going to be a conversation. This is not, here's a bunch of slides, bullet points, presentation. This is going to be an open dialogue. I know we can't race with the mics fast enough, so please speak loud enough. And please, if you would, even stand up to speak, because some people need to identify where the audio is coming from. So please make a point if you can contribute to this. What I'm going to ask you to consider, and then I'm going to, in my presentation or in our dialogue, bring it back up, is I'm putting a challenge to you. What is your worst upcoming revenue problem? Realistic, without having to give away confidential or rate-based information, but the problem itself, revenue. What is something that is a bother for you coming up? A hole, a group loss, a transient degradation, anything that you're looking at going, what am I going to do about that? Think about that as we begin our conversation. Because in the midst of our conversation, I'm going to bring that back up, and we collectively, because you imagine, look at the brain power, the capabilities that are in this room right now, the talent that is in this room right now. There should literally be no problem associated with revenue management or hospitality in general that we collectively, if we brought our resources together, could not solve in just a short time. If I cannot succeed in either pointing you in the right direction or giving you an answer that is to the solution to the problem, I promise to give you at least 3 hours, if you find it worthy, of more of my time to continue that conversation with you directly. It's my bet. Out of 29 cities that I've had the pleasure of speaking with Rocket, So far, nobody's knocked me off the hill yet. So I'm throwing that gauntlet to you today. I was nervous about New York, but I'm even more nervous now, just telling you that. What I'd like you to do, which is very different from what we normally do, is please take out your phones. We'll get past this. This link here, the little stick that I've been sitting beside all day, that's my camera. It's a really cool Mevo camera. You can zoom into different parts of it. I'm recording my session that I have the ability to offer. This link will be an extended version of the deck you just see today. There's a lot of hidden slides, as Jenny knows that there's just too many things I try to shove into the 5-pound bag, 10-pound worth. So there's a lot of additional slides that go to the context of our conversation today. That will be there, in addition to the video recording of the presentation itself, should you find it necessary to go back and say, wait a minute, what was that dialogue, what was that conversation? So that's the little bit.ly to go to for it. Everyone have their phone up, yes? Good. Unlock it, please. Now what I will ask going forward, that should you get to your phone again, after all this is over, and act like you're not paying attention, I will go over and ask a question. Everybody ask you to stand up and ask me a question, or you ask me a question. We have to keep the dialogue focused. So, is it unlocked? Everyone's phone unlocked? Yes? Hand it to the partner next to you. Hand your phone.
Whoa, you, Loren, what are you doing?
Now, feel a little weird, doesn't it? I did this at a conference, and I had them open up their photo gallery first. I almost had a revolt. Because all of a sudden it was like you're handing over your child. Please take care of the phone that's been handed to you. What I would like to do is to put a context to our conversation of how we're going to go forward today. I want to put a stick in the sand on what we're talking about with technology. And to that end, I want to play this. About 6 minutes. You can hang on the phone while we do this.
If you are sitting in the United States or Europe right now, you've probably never used a Chinese app. But the reality is, if you want to know how the internet will develop, China, the land once known for its cheap rip-offs, has actually become a guide to the future. You know, the internet is the internet, but for China, the internet is more like an intranet. It's largely walled off from the Western world by this incredibly complex system of filters and blocks that we call the Great Firewall. And basically, the Great Firewall blocks any foreign site the Communist Party doesn't need in control. So that means there is no Facebook, no Twitter, no Google. Instead, what filled the internet vacuum was a generation of Chinese copycats that have grown into huge companies. So for Google, you had Baidu. For YouTube, you had Youku. For Twitter, you had Sina Weibo. The list goes on and on. It's almost as if the Chinese internet is a lagoon as an aside to the greater ocean of the internet. And in that lagoon, there are these swamp monster apps that bear some resemblance to the creatures in the ocean. They're mutated in some ways because they evolved in a different kind of environment. But things have started to shift in the sense that before, no one outside of the lagoon really cared about the swamp monsters. But now, all of a sudden, some of the features they've developed are so amazing that Western apps are trying to copy them. And the greatest example of this is WeChat. WeChat is an example of, for lack of a better word, a super app. It's a Swiss Army knife that basically does everything for you. It's your WhatsApp, Facebook, Skype, and Uber. It's your Amazon, Instagram, Venmo, and Tinder. But it's other things we don't even have apps for. There are hospitals that have built out whole appointment booking systems. There are investment services. There are even heat maps that show how crowded a place is, be it your favorite shopping mall or a popular tourist site. The list of services goes on basically forever. But it's not the variety of things you can do on WeChat that makes it so powerful. It's the fact that they're all in one app. So why does that matter? Hypothetically, imagine you're sitting at home and one day you notice your corgi is dirty. You open WeChat, hit a few buttons, and a few hours later a man shows up at your door with some shampoo and a big vacuum. Your dog gets clean and he looks great. You take a photo, you share it with your friends, and tag the dog cleaning business. You haven't left the app. Your friend who likes Hello Kitty and works a boring office job is slacking off at work and looking at WeChat. She sees the photo of your clean corgi. She decides she wants her poodle clean. She clicks the tag on your photo and orders the same service. Within seconds, the man with the big vacuum is on his way to her house. She pays him, And he's happy because he got paid instantly on WeChat. She starts chatting with you to thank you. Neither of you have left the app. While chatting, she tells you about a new hip noodle joint. She says, you have to come. It's a schlep, but you accept. She orders food while still at her desk. You order a taxi. She pays for the food. On the way to her house, the man with the big vacuum invests the money he earned from both of you into a wealth management product that's probably a little too risky. Neither of you nor the man with the big vacuum have left the app. Both of you arrive and the app tells the kitchen you're there. Your WeChat profile photo pops up on the right. It's an old photo from the year you had that weird part in your hair. Of course she makes a comment. Your food is served. You notice your meat is a bit overcooked, so you snap a photo and post a disparaging restaurant review. You're already on your phone, and you remember you still owe your friend money because she paid to transfer her money. Neither of you, the man with the big vacuum, nor the restaurant, have left the app. At the restaurant, there are no menus, there are no waiters, there is no cashier. There is only WeChat. By rolling so many functions into one single app, it's altered the concept of virality. It's no longer just videos or images or tweets that can go viral. It's a dog washer, noodles, all sorts of companies and products that get the push of the social network. Here in China, that network is 700 million people. Sounds great, right? Well, it is, but using a single app to find a date, schedule an oil change, or notarize a document also enables WeChat to collect a staggering volume of personal data. They know what you talk about, who you talk about it with, what you read, where you go, why you're going there, who's there, how you spend money when you're online, how you spend money when you're offline. The list goes on indefinitely. For advertisers, this is a miracle. It's the combined data of Facebook, Amazon, Google, and PayPal, all in one place. The problem is, all of the data is information Chinese companies are forced to share with the Chinese government, which has a long record of human rights violations, and isn't exactly shy about stalking its citizens. So if you're not in China, why does this matter? It matters because we're starting to see a number of Western tech companies attempt to replicate super apps like WeChat. For the companies, it's incredibly powerful, and for you and me, it's convenient and even transformative technology. But of course, it could also be problematic. Concentrating so much data in so few hands could lay the groundwork for an Orwellian world where companies and governments can track every single movement you make.
So why is this relevant? We're talking about revenue management. What's happened recently in the past few months? Analytics. Yes?
GDPR.
GDPR. Why is GDPR even in existence? Because we as marketers have abused what we have had as access to this data. What has Facebook done? They've lost over $1 billion recently. And they've made some small changes to who has access to what data they were using before. And we're going to get a little bit into exactly the usabilities of Facebook and some case examples as to how this data can be used to find out our marketing strategies and so forth. And we will talk about the fact that they've partnered with a lot of people for data beyond what they already have collected for us. It's no mistake that there is a lot of similarities to what we are trying to create in a tech world to what's being represented in China. But the most important part of it is the key element to what we are going to talk about today is the real and tangible capabilities of combining revenue management strategy, what you use for revenue management strategy, and what digital marketing does and what they use in digital marketing. And we're not just going to be hypothetical. We shouldn't be the first to be saying today, guess what, digital marketing and revenue management should be together. We've been hearing this mantra for a couple of years now. We're really going to talk about actual functional methodologies of how to combine those two elements together into a working environment that actually produces something. So when you go home tomorrow and then share all the amazing stuff I went through today, data and stats and thoughts and concepts and so forth, there's an actual actionable statement that when everybody leaves and your cup of coffee is still beside your keyboard, you have something to type in and start working on. That's our goal. All right, please return your phone to the person next to you that, if you haven't already. Now, with your phone still open, for those with iPhones, please follow the instructions on the screen. I don't have to read them to you quickly, but the significant locations, actually, the term has just recently changed to important locations or something. But just take a quick moment. I hate when someone tries to read a slide faster than I can read it personally, so please just go through them. Android people, not a worry. Your moment will come in just a moment. Not necessarily go through the same exercise. For the first person that gets here, please raise your hand and let me know what it is that you see now. I will say that if you have turned off your location settings on your iPhone, the result that I'm looking for will not come up. But if you have not turned off your location settings, which helps all your apps do the things that they do for you, then it'll bring you to a place that maybe you haven't gone to in your phone to realize what your phone does. Now, Tim over at Apple has said that Zuckerberg is on the bad business model. And what he means by that is that Zuckerberg uses the data that they know about you in the terms and conditions of the policy to market for you or to improve the environment for you. Apple says, Tim, that all the data that we know about you on your phone, we don't use. We don't share it, we don't use it. Anybody get to the point to the bottom of this list? It's quite a long scroll, by the way. Anybody raise your hand if you get there. All right, what is it you may say, sir?
I've got all the options to turn on or off. Cell network search, compass calibration network.
That one, but farther down, if you go down to locations, I think it's important locations, or I forget the term they changed it to. It's not significant locations anymore. It should bring you up a map.
Location-based alert, location-based contact, location-based.
No, it still brings you down to a map. What it will eventually show you, not to keep too much time to this, is that it will show you a map and it will show you circles on a map. And it'll have a number beside it. That's where you've been and how long you were there.
That's creepy.
Okay. So, that's Apple. That's data in your phone. It's supposedly yours. Apple's not using it. Well, at least they're not sharing it. What I'd like to do is for your Android owners, let's watch this.
We know that Google is tracking us. We agree to it when we set up our phones. So we wanted to figure out what exactly Google is learning about us throughout the day. So here's what we're going to do. We have two identical phones. The only difference between these two phones is this one is in airplane mode. Both of the phones lack a SIM card, and they haven't been set up to access any Wi-Fi networks. So for all intents and purposes, these phones have no connection to a data network. We're going to keep them with us throughout the day. And while I travel around DC, we're going to figure out just what Google is finding out about me.
Our first stop, Sim's convenience store, just outside our Fox Bureau, for a quick coffee. From there, we took a walk to the Capitol and took a quick walk around the Senate office buildings, and then decided to hop in a car and head around town.
Hello. We'll go to the Children's Hospital, please.
To run our test, we had to do more than walk the block, so we took a tour around our nation's capital. First, due north to the Children's National Medical Center Hospital, then west to St. Albans School and the National Cathedral. Our tour around town was a 14-mile journey that lasted more than an hour. The entire time, the phones had no access to the internet.
Oh my goodness.
Not a Wi-Fi connection and not any cellular data service. It almost seemed quaint to assume that Google wouldn't even be able to collect data on me.
Let's head back to the Bureau, my friend. Oh, that church is beautiful.
Google's business model is simple. Collect data on its users and then use that data to sell targeted ads. It's a business model called surveillance capitalism. But does that critical data collection work even when your phones aren't connected?
So we're back here at our Fox Bureau in DC, and we've got both of our phones exactly how we left with them. The only difference, really, I snapped a couple of bad selfies at the National Cathedral. But otherwise, they have stayed in my pocket for the entire day. So let's find out what they know. This is our man-in-the-middle device. It's basically a Wi-Fi network that these phones are going to connect to once we turn their Wi-Fi on. It's going to pass data through it on the way to Google. But on the way, we're actually going to get a copy of the same data that Google's going to get. We'll be able to decrypt it and then find out where we've been throughout the day.
Within minutes, the numbers rolled in. The phone that wasn't on airplane mode registered more than 100 locations, 130 activities, and even 152 barometric readings. As soon as it hooked up to our Wi-Fi, it transmitted 300 kilobytes of data straight to Google. The phone even logged our exact locations, tracking us all around town, the Capitol, the hospital, the school, and the cathedral.
Now you may notice what's missing here is the exact route that we took, but it got that data too. It knows when I got out of the car.
The metadata has a time log down to the very second, tracking everything. When they think that you're walking, riding, and yes, even getting out of the car.
Okay, so you're thinking, this isn't a big deal, I'll just put my phone in airplane mode. Yeah, we thought of that too. This is the other phone that we had with us that no SIM card also remained in airplane mode the entire time. Let's see what kind of data it captured.
The phone with airplane mode activated actually logged more locations and activities than the other phone, and it also transferred hundreds of kilobytes of data to Google as soon as it was activated.
The only thing that's missing from this map is our stop at the Children's Hospital, but it still knows we were there. There it is. Exiting vehicle, 100% accuracy.
Through complicated user agreements and free software, Google gets users to sign away their privacy for nothing. They're even following you in the places that most people would expect total privacy. Government buildings, a children's hospital, a private school, a church. Every move you make, every step you take, Google is watching you.
Okay. Why are we referring to this? Well, in all honesty, to give you a sense of what...
We know that Google is tracking us. We agree.
Marketing. The only difference between marketers and government is that as a marketer, I know everything about you but your name. The government knows you by name. With all of the data availability from a marketing perspective, I can tailor and target. I can define and refine. And unfortunately, through multiple platforms, I can triangulate and eventually find you down to a consumer point, which is ultimately what the guest, our guest, is looking for. They want the personalization. It's been stated over and over that I'd much rather surrender personalization, my personal data to receive more personalization because I don't want to see all the junk and the stuff that I'm not interested in. This is the cost to this. For all of us old enough to remember, we were so amazed that the phones started doing things like cameras and GPSs and things like this. Well, this is also the repercussion of that. Our phone is all those things and more. It can tell us how high up in the air we are and how fast we're traveling and everything else about it. But it also means that that data is also being collected. And I, as a marketer, can use that data. You, as a revenue person, should have access to it. Because that correlation of what's known and what you do should be put together within the boundaries of the data's value. And you brought up GDPR, and we'll point out to it earlier or later. And basically, GDPR is in existence because we should treat the data as if it was our own family's data being shared. If you treat the data as not your own, and it's your guess, and it's a privilege to use it to their benefit, GDPR has no impact on the negativity of your business. If, however, you treat it in the sense of abuse and isolationism and targeting that you shouldn't know things about certain people, then GDPR is the perfect fence for you, and more fences are to come. So, what are we? Let's step back a little bit. We are in the greatest industry ever. And I say that only from the passion of being in the industry my entire life. For so long, the American dream, the iconic perspective was picket fences, little houses, suburbia, 2.5 children, I don't know where the half comes from, but that was the dream. That's not the dream anymore. Now we blame millennials. Oh, millennials, they've changed the scope of things. No. Culturally, globally, we have changed. We no longer just want to own a small little house in suburbia with 2.5 kids and 2 little cars and have a perfect job and come back and retire and everything else. We want experiences. We want to enjoy what the world is because we've learned more about the world through literally the shareability of data. So we know more of what we can do, more places maybe we want to see that we never knew existed before. We are exactly in that industry. Now with all this knowledge that we have, of all the people that are wanting to experience the world, experience what we have, very few places in the world have the iconic structure of image recognition as a place like Las Vegas. It's one of the few places globally that has a completely specific perspective as to what the expectations are individually. But what we end up doing is doing this to our guests. This is a structured breakdown of transient group according to Marriott 3 years ago. It's not really meant to be read, it is just to make the fact that we categorize people. We put them into containers. We put them into the groupings. Unless you have a very small blue person that has checked into your hotel, there's no such thing as a Smurf. However, we have a whole list of categories associated with Smurf business. Why do you think we do this? It's a legitimate question. Anyway, why do we say you're in this category of business?
Market segmentation.
Segmentation, which would lead to what? Why would we segment people like that?
Allocation of resources.
Allocation, perfect example of that, yes. Knowing what to do for them by category. We know that wedding has a certain context to it, which has a certain level of business and time is spent and cost associated with it compared to corporate traveling, compared to fraternal, military, genuine transient because we have to categorize them as a human. We stereotype people all the time. All the time. It's our way of understanding how to first interact with somebody. I'm a middle-aged, overweight white man. It is the way people categorize you. As much as it is, if I pull up in a BMW, I'm a middle-aged, overweight white man with a midlife crisis going on. The idea is that we try to categorize people so as to how we will interact with them. I don't know enough of you individually to know exactly your individual interests, to know exactly how to speak with you as an individual yet. But there's tons of data. Now, I know we had a wonderful argument today between artificial intelligence and humanity. Artificial intelligence will help us a lot in understanding who we're looking at. There won't be too far in the future, we're walking down the street with some augmented reality glasses going on, and it's going to identify people by face, and it's going to tell you enough about them that you can reach up and say, hey, Bob, good to see you. How's the family? Saw that you just had a new son, this and this, because it's going to have that interactive value. You no longer can show up at a party going, I don't know your name, but I'll smile. You know, you get to know people because technology will help you. It helps us with marketing for that point. So, categorization is because that's how we can allocate resources to target them for marketing, to know how to handle them categorically. But what does that do? It takes your individuality away and makes you a part of a collective. So what may be interestingly unique about you gets lost in the homogeny of the group you've been assigned. That's not good marketing. This is how we see most of our interactions. Whoops, went too far. We see it in a cyclic, linear way. We're trying to get them. Before they get there, we're going to try to augment them. While they're with us, we're going to try to amplify them. And when they leave, we want to try to reconnect with them. But nothing about what we do is linear. Just, if you have a question that, explain why you went online to look for a hotel room in Las Vegas and ended up buying a bicycle on Amazon. And then try to explain it, because it's not. It's every which way but loose. We have to redefine that what we're dealing with from a marketing perspective, and hence a revenue management model, is not in a direction, but in a radius, a growth of accepting everything around it and collectively identifying the individual value of what you're creating as interactions. I know it sounds very, lots of words. Here are some aspects of how digital marketing, which is almost to be synonymously saying marketing at this point. I mean, it was pointed out earlier today, such a high percentage relates to digital. It's not and never will be the complete entity, but it does dominate and touch every aspect of what we do for marketing. Digital does. And this is how revenue management and digital marketing can collaborate. Some of the most of it, when we look at this, is channel management. How is it that we can better define where we're finding our sources of business, the cost associated with those channels, okay? And what we should do to augment the value of that channel. Now, before I start losing you all by thinking that we're just keep repeating, marketing should be doing this for revenue, let me ask you two questions that have never yet been answered but once, and only one question, out of the 29 cities we've had the pleasure of doing rocket. I'm going to take Bonnie Buckheisser's question. Please, will somebody tell me their most profitable channel? With accuracy, the percentage of their contribution. What is your most profitable channel?
Direct booking online.
Really? For sure. I mean, we love to say, I would love to be, personally, I would love to be able to say that, but I have yet to have a client that does that either. It's what I want. But the percentage contribution doesn't say that. Because it would have to be over 50% of your total business and at the cost of that channel for it to truly be. Correct? Math? So, with that said, let me ask the second question. What is the percentage of your direct channel? I hate to say it, but now it's 30 cities. The idea is this. If you can't answer those two questions, you can't define the channels you need to focus on. And it isn't always direct channel. I'm up here to say, yes, direct channel, please, let's do direct channel. OTAs are not evil, okay? OTAs are a function of methodology of your revenue management skills. They are a component of what drives revenue to your hotel. There are times where the different channels, and you know this from your own business cycle, provide different value propositions based on the market that they're driving. To force and mandate that your direct channel must always be the premier channel of choice is to be ignorant of what channels contribute to what they do. It doesn't mean you shouldn't continue to try to expand the channel's value, because to your point, I think you're really trying to say, is the cost of that channel is the most beneficial to you, is the most controllable cost, is the most affordable cost, compared to all the other channels. You have to share the revenue more than you do your own direct channel. But you have to know what your percentage contribution is for your channel, and you have to know what your most profitable channel is. And that isn't always by necessarily the volume and cost, it's a collaboration between the two. This, oops, sorry, I see the slide in different ways than you do. This is a overly simplistic way of trying to create a cross pattern between revenue management and marketing's knowledge. There's the unknown and the known customers. There are the people that you deal with, that you know the entity, the historical data associated with them, where they've come from, what they've spent, the duration of their stay, their arrival dates. That's the known entity. Then there's the unknown, which is, where are they coming from? What are they willing to spend? How long are they willing to stay with us? And these are the segmentations and how they interact. And this is more for reflective looking later on, because it's kind of, when you start looking at it, it's a simple diagram, but it actually kind of represents an interesting perspective. What I like to do is I borrowed this graphic from Ideas, only because James, sweetheart she was, we were having a conversation, and I told her that revenue management was a lot like driving a car with your rear view mirror only. And this is just a visual representation of it. You may know your route so well that you can look into your rear view mirror and onto your sides, and you can see where you are and where you've been in an attempt to get to where you want to go. The real reality of it is, though, you run the risk that things have changed in front of you. You may not be as accurate in your location of where you think you are, and hence you run a very serious risk of running into something you didn't anticipate. Marketing is all about the future. It's all about intent, interest, what's happening, where they're coming from, what are they looking at, why are they looking at it, the information that you're not dealing with. And when I say this, it's because, again, it's a simplistic diagram. Everything to the right of that blue square is your world. That's your prime booking window. You know when there's peak opportunity for people based on a destination date. You know when they're going to be arriving, their length of their stay date, their departure dates, their length of stay. That's the material world of data that you deal with as revenue managers. But that whole blue area, that research period, if you want to call it that, is the realm of marketing. It's the forward tense to the past tense of what you know for data. When you combine that data to the data that you have, you turn into predictive modeling. And that's just not a word. It's a technique that doesn't require AI and doesn't even take anything more than Excel. It takes data and taking the data that you have and putting the two together and making assumptions from it. It's as simple as that. What I'd like to do is give you some examples of why I say what I'm saying and how marketing data can be used effectively for revenue problems. I asked this question as well. So, I had a hotel that 2 weeks out lost 62% of its occupancy from a group drop. That group dropped because of a tragedy. There was an attrition clause we were not going to exercise. It was a repeat group annually. We weren't going to jeopardize our relationship long-term with them, so we weren't going to exercise that attrition clause. We were going to lose 62% of our occupancy 2 weeks out. There are some brilliant revenue minds in this room. Please, what would you do? I'll take the obvious off the table. Dropping the rate. Hoping for the residual demand cycle still there. Irritating everybody in your comp set. Putting money back on the table for those who are the remaining percentage that is still coming. What else?
If you're in a group, you contact groups and see if dates are movable. See if anyone has flexibility.
See if you can fill the hole with surrounding. Yes, thank you. What else? I noticed the perfunctory flash sales channel that hopefully opaquely won't be seen by something else. There are all those little levers and pulls, but basically the fundamental lever that you have in this equation is dropping rate. We approached it differently. What we did is, Facebook has a wonderful thing called custom audiences. And what we did was we made 3 custom audiences. We took everybody that was same time last year. We took it from our CRM system. We put them into a custom audience. Custom audiences is Facebook's way of saying, please give me your emails of the people you know, and I will tell you if we know them. And then all the information in Facebook that's aware of them, all the things from demographic, geographic, all that stuff is now usable filters that we can create to make sure that whatever we're about to post is seen by them. The second audience we took, okay, was everybody within 150 miles. Why 150 miles? I'm sorry?
It's a drive.
Drive market. It's too short for the flight window, which is usually 21 up. It was drive market, 150. Maybe they can have the opportunity because somebody across the country certainly could take advantage of a short-term offer. Excellent point. And the third was, we took everybody that was on the books for that weekend and also made a custom audience out of that. Why did we do that? Because we put all three of them together, but the audience of the people that were on the books, we made them a negative audience, which meant they weren't about to see what we were about to do. Why did we do that? No money back on the table, or at least a restrictive amount. People will still find what they want to find. And we sent out the group rate to what we had left, in the hopes that we could reclaim some of the percentage that we had lost. Sold out. Does it happen all the time? No, that's why this one's an example. It's targeting what you have to the people most interested and advantageous. What do we always say? Right place, right planet, right person, right time. It's also having the right opportunity in front of the right person as well. So, another example. This goes back a few years actually. I had the privilege of speaking at Focusrite, and at the time I was with a hotel group that had a hotel up the road. And just it was far enough away. I was living in Florida, but I didn't want to fight the traffic, so I called the hotel up. It was actually the night down in Florida, and the rate was $4.99. I'm like, yeah, nobody's not going to pay for me for $4.99 for one night. So I called a hotel in my inventory up the road. Of course, the general golden rule is you can't displace revenue. So I want to make sure that we're sold out by now. I mean, heck, they're just a minute up the road, 5 minutes up the road. They got to have been sold out. This is a massive, conference. So I called them up and I said, hey, you guys sold out for the dates, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, why? I'm like, because of the big conference. You guys do read awards, right? And they didn't know about it, didn't think about it. And I said, well, what's your rack? They said $3.99. And there was some 60% something occupancy. And I said, wow, $3.99 for rack. Well, what's best available? $2.99. So what I did was, in Facebook, I made a custom audience of everybody that liked Focusrite. And everybody that was a premier sponsor of Focusrite. And I made a custom audience out of that. And I sent them that ad that literally said, hey, are you attending Focusrite? Enjoy a 40-hour service, almost $100, lasts just 5 minutes up the road. Sold out all 7 days within the site. So we thought, wow, lightning, can't do that again. 2 years later, came back again, just like bang a big red button, did it all over again. Why? Because we're targeting something directly to the people that are interested in what we're having to say. We're not in that white noise conversation. Now, again, I'm bringing these up as examples because these are the weapons, tools, knives, whatever you want to refer to them as, that marketing has, but they don't know they're valuable to you. Okay? I'll tell you why in a little bit. Let's flip it over to F&B. I had a restaurant bar that just went through a massive $1 million worth of millions of dollars worth of renovations. Had been in their market for over 30 years. They were a beachside town. But in that 30 years, they developed 71 direct competitors within walking distance of themselves. Now, I used to own restaurants, and this is a combination of old school marketing and new school stuff, technology. And when I used to own restaurants, and I had happy hours and so forth, the key element to improving my happy hour was to get as many single women in my happy hour as possible. Because what happens when single women show up at your happy hour? Single dudes show up. And they're the ones buying the drinks. So, I had a problem. The restaurant was beginning to have a problem on their Fridays. They weren't getting the crowds. Now, because there were 71 competitors in the market, the real currency of that area was parking. Because once you parked one place, you could do whatever you wanted to in the entire market. So what we did was we created a filter to post. We did it free first. And what we did was we post 2 females, 24 to 34, they indicated single, they want to create family issues. They like live music within a 5-mile radius, because you can do that. And what we offered them was in the post, it said, show this to valet and get free valet parking. And we sent it out literally at 5 o'clock on Friday. Because then, you're leaving the office, legal, whatever, they're walking out, doctor's office, whatever. So, well, I don't know, let's go, you don't do happy hour. Poof, pops in their post. Well, we had 150 parking spots. We took the post down at 5:45 because we had no more parking spots. And while we had another post that was going to come up at 9:45 because the live music started at 10 o'clock. So we wanted to, revive the audience and get people there. We ended up offering just free drinks because why? Nobody left. Because everything was there that they wanted. The girls were there, the guys were there, the music started up, everyone was happy, nobody left. We thought, again, this is lightning. Anytime we wanted to, we thought our competitors would have figured this out. Anytime we wanted to influence our market, and we started doing paid advertisement with this, we started targeting income levels and so forth. Because obviously the less money you made, the less likelihood you wanted to buy your own drinks. So, kind of worked. Hey, all fair marketing, right? And we did this repetitively. One time, just not on the screen, but just as a point, in the same market, we were down at a competitor's restaurant. And I was flipping through, if you ever want to get scared, there's an app called Banjo. And it tracks all social postings that you don't securely shut down. So if you don't shut your securities down to being only friends or whatever, if you post on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, whatever, it shows up on a map. You can go anywhere in the world and see everybody's posting any location at any time. It's amazing, and it's scary as hell. Anyway, I was on Banjo showing it off, and I noticed that somebody had posted a picture of the bar I was sitting at. It looked like from the angle of the dude that was there. So I went over and tweeted, because it was on Twitter that it came through on, I said, hey, I noticed you're at deck 84. Show this post to the bartender at Boston's and I'll buy you a free drink. Watch the dude stand up and walk out. Not scalable, but still cool. Always weird, like, how can I do that like lots and lots of times? All right. It has its limitations. This is not a lesson for Facebook. I'm not here to show you all the movement metrics of Facebook and how Facebook works. It does some crazy stuff. Anybody still do blitzes, just out of curiosity? You go around the cookies and hand out stuff? Good. Because any company that you work for, people tend to follow, which is a filter. If I want to talk to my top 10 employers in my market, I just make filters for them in Facebook and offer them whatever rate I want. Hey, you work for XYZ company? Here's your rate, click here. I don't have to deal with the company anymore. I don't have to ask the permission to get into their intranet or to share with their people or all the things that you used to do. For instance, you had to go through past receptions and all this. I just target them by their company. And if you want to go over and target your competitors, you can do things like pick their address, make a little radius, and have 3 categories you can choose data from. People that live within the radius, people that live within 25 miles of the radius, or people that live beyond 99 miles of that radius. Guess which ones are the guests that are traveling beyond 99 miles. And target everybody that's at your competitor. Hey, have a great experience in XYZ town. Next time, stay with us. And give them an offer. And especially if your competitor is having some review issues, it helps. One time we went over to an airport in Canada that had a notorious delay back when there was bad weather. And we were opening an airport hotel around it. And we did a geofence, what's called when you put a parameter around a certain location, like much what we're talking about proximity marketing. And we used a trigger that every time they use things like stuck, delayed, what have you, we went over and immediately retweeted them, because it was on Twitter that we were doing this, stuck at XYZ airport, we offer 10% off our best available rate, and our shuttle's waiting at gate 5. And our competitors, we were the new kids on the block, we were the 5th hotel. Couldn't understand why, because they were also at gate 5. While all these people were parading over to our shiny new van and hopping into our little van going to our hotel, and they're sitting there empty, is because we were telling the people before they even knew that there was a problem, hey, you got stuck at this airport? We're going to give you a discount and the bus is waiting. It worked out great. You do that for a lot of people. But anyway, back to this. So, it has its limitations. If we're just doing profiling and generalization as to what we know about these people, here are 2 people that look identical from what we have as data here. So, if we were to market to them, we'd probably send them the same message. Except for, they're not quite the same people. There has limitations to this. This isn't the magic bullet. There is no more magic bullets. This is small integrations of success. Little things that you can do to improve what you're doing. Being realistic that these are limitations that you have keeps it in the context of usability. Anyway, so really cool stuff. We over lunch, I think, or breakfast, we had talked about Tableau. I think there's some people I had spoken with about Tableau, and I was mentioning other platforms as well. But I did. This goes to show you the interaction. We're going to talk about the interactions now between digital marketing and revenue management. You may not be aware of the data that's available to use. Let me ask you a question. If I could tell you where somebody was looking for what dates they wanted to stay in your market, how helpful would that be to you as a revenue manager? Scale of 1 to 10. We'll make it easy. 8, 9, 7, about there. It's available for you for free right now. You just have to ask your IT people. There's a wonderful thing called Google Tag Manager. Google Tag Manager is your method of tracking everything that happens on your website. Everything. What happens on your website? I go in and I'm looking for dates of interest. Well, analytically, they know where I am geographically. So if I'm in a city, say Philadelphia, looking at your hotel for March 27th, then that data can get recorded. And if it's data that can get recorded, it's data that can be used. So what I did was I took Tableau, and I took that data, and I made a fun graph. Now, it's hard to see, sorry, and this is actually old, it's much more refined than it is now. But to this far right-hand side, there was a slider by week. And so as a revenue manager, I could slide it to whatever week I'm like, hey, you know, I'm soft on such and such. I'm looking for something in such and such week. And as I slid it over, it would show me with the larger and smaller balloons as to the amount of volume of interest, the days of lead time that that geographic location was interested in that week that I was looking at. So now I know, gosh, Chicago's 81 days out. Now obviously, if you're less than that, it's kind of not as productive. You have to be far enough out that this is usable data, so hopefully you're not looking for next week because that's a little late to figure that out. But if you're looking far enough ahead, you can actually see lead times and market. That's only the first step. And this is just pure market data at this point. This is not your data. This is just market information. This is off your website, your analytics. Wonder if I then correlated that to the revenue that that market represented to me historically by ADR, length of stay, and I would ask the Tableau to show me the X number of cities that can make 80% of the revenue for the date that I'm interested in, the week that I'm interested in. So what I have now is all the markets with the amount of revenue value as the key indicator that they represent to that for me for that week. And it also showed me the channel and channels that were used historically to generate that revenue. Now, one more step past this. If, and this is the revenue management portion of this, if I have a rate that I'm looking for, and I have a rate resistance history as to, by market, as to what that market sensitivity is. Say, for instance, I'm looking for a 199 rate. And Philadelphia, they are historically for that week at 167. I might not be likely to want to target Philadelphia because I don't want that much low rate. By the same token, if Philadelphia is my #1 revenue generator, then perhaps I might want some of that. So where would I go? Well, then I would look at the channel contribution and say, well, paid ads was 26%, organic search was 30%. Let's look at paid ads. What was my conversion in paid? It was 2.5%, okay? What was the cost per conversion? Or even cost per click? And I can actually make a budget that says, if you give me X dollars on these channels, on these dates, with this rate, I'll get this occupancy and this revenue. Sounds like revenue management, but that's all marketing. Literally, that was all marketing data. But if you took all that and put it with what you do with revenue, now you're talking about something crazy. This is a very simplistic worksheet that I made for a client. I'm making them understand what I went back to your question before, which was, what is your direct channel contribution? A Pinto can't win NASCAR. If your direct channel is 4%, no matter how good you make it, it ain't going to carry the boat. It has to have a certain percentage contribution for it to be of value to you. So no matter what you do with it, if it's only a small portion of your pie of contribution by channel, it's only going to be optimized as far as it can go. So keep that perspective in mind. So what this is a simple Excel sheet What we did was we took the forecasted revenue per month of the hotel, and we took group away from it because it's a different strategy to it. Just make it simple. We focus strictly on transient. And transient, we said, what is our percentage direct channel contribution? And we made 3 categories, 10%, 9%, 8%. And I did change them simply because I didn't want to reflect it because I might pop up with a client that might think this is it. These are low numbers. But what I did was saying that if 10% was direct channel, then in the month of January, which is that first column you can't see, about $250,000, $223,000 is supposed to do direct channel that month that I'm supposed to generate through direct channel at 10%. Now, what I did in the second section was I identified what the direct channel tools were. PPC, travel ads, third-party meta search, retargeting social. You may have more, you may have less. But I broke them all down with the modifier being how much of them is their contribution to that. Like PPC in this case is 70% of the direct channel. Okay? And this is historical data you have. Your marketing person has this data. Then I looked at, by month, the conversion value of each channel. Because we talked about OTAs, direct channel, everything fluxes according to your business cycles. So each month had a different conversion value for that particular segment. PPC was a 7-to-1 return in January, 4-to-1 for travel ads, so forth and so on. What this created was the revenue, what each of these are supposed to generate for that month, broken down. And knowing the cost, return on value, how much it actually costs. So now I actually have a budget of what I need to spend for the revenue I'm supposed to generate by the channel that's contributing it to the quantity that it's obligated for. So in effect, I can create a forecast with this that when you go to sit down with ownership and talk about, okay, I need $2 million in budget. Oh, we only give you 1.5. Well, I can't give you revenue. Well, why not? Well, because I actually need, in January, $22,330.49. Well, I can only give you $20,000. Well, then you're not going to get $156,000. Because it is according to the history. Now, obviously, there's 2 modifying factors to this. Your conversion improvement or your volume of traffic improvement. But those are modifiers. They're not the reality of the historical data. But you can see as revenue managers, if this is clicking, this is the stuff that you have that's available to you if you ask the right questions of your marketing team. Okay? This goes on and on about the need to know what your direct channel contribution is. What is it? 20? Jenny always keeps me in track because I think we'll lose it by now. All right. Example, simplest example. If I have 10 leads and I have a conversion rate of 10% and the sale is worth $7,500 and my frequency of purchase is 1, generated profit is $7,500, right? If I have 20 leads and my conversion rate stays the same, my sales is still $7,500 per transaction and I do more frequency, my general profit is $15,000, right? Let me ask you a question. Does that make sense? If I double everything? Because here's the real thought to this process. Double one, you double the growth. You double all of them, you have 16 times the growth without spending more money. That's the key element to the conversation. It's not about throwing more money at something. It's not marketing saying if you gave me more, I could do more. There's an efficiency model, a law of diminishing returns. You can spend the next dollar and be the worst dollar you spent because you spent more than the dollar you just did. So what you're really looking at is exponential growth associated with the metrics that you use in a very simplistic way. What does it cost me? What's the conversion? What's the value of that conversion? What can I modify out of those processes? All right. This came out of our conversation at the Digital Marketing Conference. Michael did this, it was great. I want to focus on only one of these. The other slides are hidden for if you want to play back off that link I gave you earlier, we'll give it again. This is the circle of conversation that has to become created from the marketing revenue management conversation. There is the reality of what you have to do with your marketer and the conversation that you have to create with it. First off is the collaboration. The one I want to focus most on is the common vernacular. Can somebody tell me what ROAS is? R-O-A-S.
Return on ad spend.
And what does it mean to you?
It means every dollar you spend on advertising, you're turning it into bigger money.
And as a revenue manager, What's the metric, and does it help you?
I'm a marketing person and helps me.
Aha! That's why you know it. Revenue managers, thank you for the answer. Revenue managers, what does ROAS mean to you? Absolutely nothing. But as a marketer, I love it. Because I get to walk around beating my chest like Tarzan. You know, 10 to 1, I did 10 to 1 ROAS, I kicked ass. Yeah.
36 months.
Yeah, 36 to 1. Here's the reality of this. You need $100,000 that month. You come to me as the marketer and say, I need $100,000. Okay. Here's my 4 rates. Expensive, less expensive, dirt cheap. I take dirt cheap for $200. And I throw the marketing into it and I get a 30 to 1 ROAS. And I made you $5,000. Woo! But I got a 31 ROAS. I'm safe. I gotta get out of jail. I did my thing. I got my stuff, I got my 30 to 1 ROAS, that's my measurement, that's what I did. And you as a revenue manager going, dude, I need $95,000 more. Where's the other 95 coming from? I don't know, it's your fault. I got you for 30 to 1 ROAS, I'm good. We're not talking the same language. First point of language, KPI. Key performance indicator. What is it that we're trying to do? It's almost as if you have to get on a little dinghy boat in the ocean and tie a big cinder block to both of y'all's ankles saying, well, both of us are going to swim or both of us are going to sink. But neither one of us is going to do this alone. You have to be mutual risk. You have to be in the same boat, literally. You have to win together and fail together. And that comes out of telling the truth, sharing real data. It's not 4 out of 5 dentists agree. It's 20% of people didn't like it. It's knowing what numbers mean the same to both of you and agreeing on what numbers mean the success for both of you for you actually to do this. You need the common vernacular. To that end, this has to stop. There should no longer be reporting. Reporting is, here you go, thanks. Done. I gave you the information I think you wanted in terms that make me look good, you figure that all the rest of it out. Compared to analytics, which is, dang dudes, we're in trouble. This ain't working the way we want it to. Fail fast, learn quicker. Get to doing what you need to do by agreeing to what you're actually trying to accomplish. And that's done through KPIs. That's the first point of vernacular. I harper on this because it has to come out of mutual trust, mutual risk, mutual reward. Marketing has to be tied to revenue management. Revenue management, you are the horizon line. This is where we are going. Marketing is the ones going to take a left, take a right, stop. They're the ones that are going to get you in that process from data that they're using, which we demonstrated some of that data, and some of the data that you're using to determine if the value of that data is usable. Okay? So, this is a bit of a perfect world where all of the things that we work with work together. Because as we know, all these things don't currently talk to each other. They work in silos. They're individual of each other. We operate separately. These things operate separately. If you ever tried to transfer data, I tried to help a client ask me, it's like, look, we really want to incorporate our reporting process into one thing. I have 3 people manually extracting brand data, transferring it off of non-transferable PDFs into readable documentation, putting it up to a structured Google sheet that's been zapped down to a format that's then incorporated with something else that's put into a readable sheet every day. And says, anybody read the report? Nope. Just get the report. Because they only look at certain things anyway. So all these things, technology-wise, do have to begin to combine. They do need to begin to talk to each other. And the same problem we have with between marketing and revenue management is there has to be a common vernacular for them to work. Now I threw this slide in for nothing other than just make a point. And I don't know if anybody, is anybody here from the hotel today?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right, yes, there's 28 things, actually there was 35, they didn't all trigger when I took this snapshot. That's tracking data on your website. I would imagine most of that data is being shared. Could be, couldn't be, whatever. Unfortunately, the larger the corporation, the larger the silos, the more simplistic, the more you only need to know what you need to know. We had that conversation with breakfast, actually, where it was like sometimes larger corporations, it's like you don't know that another man's trash is your treasure. It's the missing piece to your puzzle. It's the data you wish you had that you didn't even know the company was collecting. And they're like, oh yeah, we get that all the time. A little bit maybe like you didn't know that your websites, you can track the dates that people are looking and geographically where they came from. and just make a simple translation of that to your forecasting. You may not know the data was there. Then there's some simplistic ways of doing things. This is free, this is from Google, it's called Fusion. We had a spa resort, very affluent spa resort, that was beginning to lose its business cycle. And what we did was we took the past 2 years of where they got business from, down to the zip code out of their CRM system. And we just simply, now this is a static image, we could zoom down to a zip code and it would give you a color. But what it did do was it showed us by a heat map where they had historically got business from. This is not massive technology, this is pretty straightforward stuff. And like I said, it's free from Google, it's called Fusion. Just shove the data in. And so we saw this heat map, and we're like, okay. So we looked, and what we did was we created a quadrant system. We took the zip codes, because it was an affluent place. We knew that income was probably the largest propensity for people to come. And we made that an axis, and then we put that against the revenue generated from that same zip code. Just, hey, if you make a lot of money, we should have gotten a lot of money from that zip code. Pretty straightforward. We made this quadrant system. So anybody in the lower right, because down here was the income, meant that they had the income to stay with us. We just weren't getting a lot of business from them. So all we did was send them a snail mail. Hey, remember us? We'd love to have you back. No special offer, no nothing, just brand awareness. We figured they lost track of the fact that they had been with us before. 30% lift in 30 days. Just by reminding them of the great time that they had. Simply because we could identify that they probably would have the propensity to be able to enjoy us again. Very quickly, these things are happening. And I say that because, for instance, now websites aren't websites anymore. Websites are portals with dynamic content. If I know from what I know about you, from all the things we've shown, when you come to my website, I have the intent of knowing that you might be a business traveler. So my website now has business traveler images, business traveler information, business traveler offers. As soon as you show me that I'm wrong, all the images and the content changes. I'm not trying to make you go through a funnel we used to go through, which was, let me guess what you're looking for, and give you too many navigation points, and you get tired of trying to figure out where everything is at. The other is, the search box is going away. And I say that because, Alexa, Google Assistant. Did you see the Google Assistant now has duplex? Anybody see that? Yeah, there's a slide in here somewhere. Google will call for you and act like a human and can make reservations for you, answer questions for you, and you're not there. It actually talks for you. Actually, I think I have this example. Anyway, AI will control your marketing. I have a little link. It's in the long deck. If we get to it, we can. Lucy. Has anybody heard of Lucy? Okay. Lucy is IBM. Remember IBM Watson? Won the Jeopardy thing and all that stuff? Well, Lucy's his sister that does marketing. And I have a link in the long version as well, but it almost sounds like it's scary. You can put structured and unstructured data. If you're not familiar with both, structured is, of course, like Excel format stuff and things, and then unstructured is what's the weather in Topeka going to be like tomorrow? I don't know. But that kind of data floats out there, and it puts it all together, and it can actually answer questions for you. Here, let's do this. I'm going to go over and jump, which I knew I was going to do. All right, so let me show you some fun stuff. This is, whoop, Crystal. Why is it not showing on the screen? Oh, no, I'm not going to show you.
You have it extend.
Huh?
You just have to extend.
It's on the other. Here, let's do this. Hold on. There we go. Stay here. And let me go over and do this. See if I can move it over. Nope, not that way. There it is. Okay. Where are we? That's Crystal. My clients, I don't know why it is, but okay. So I send them all these forms all the time, reports and things like this, and I try to customize them all the time. Crystal is AI. Crystal is connected to their social platforms and their analytics platforms, and they talk to it. They hit the little speak button and say, hey, what's my traffic light on my website? And it will send them answers back. It'll go over and actually answer them the question that they ask. Now, of course, it's dependent upon what they're connected to and what it is that the data that they're asking for. It doesn't work perfect by any stretch, but it is there. Where's my little key there? Okay, that's one of them. Let me see if we scroll down. They'll tell you all the fun stuff. Talk to you later. How long? All right, so here, just to show you, data is around you everywhere. From a marketing perspective to a revenue management person. This, I can watch any social platform of any competitor that I want and know what it is that they're doing, what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, what their favorite posts were, what their better posts were, when they were posting correctly, what was the best time that they posted. I don't have to reinvent wheels. I don't have to guess at things. I can research my competitors and know what they're doing and how they're doing it. I can go over and then, is it a fun one? Wario. This will tell me everything that's happening in social with the competitors I'm looking for. They're influencers, and I want to get to that, which means I have to go back to this real quick. Because I want to talk a little bit about things that you need to be worried about. Okay, I'll give you examples. Bots. I have a client that has a tremendous level 1 problem. They get inundated with, I want a copy of my receipt, I want this, I want that, what's this, what's this, what's that. So we created a bot that answers 85% of level 1 questions. Has slowed their problems down to only being level 2. That if they can't get solved within the bot, it's in 3 languages. And it's just really creating the structure of taking the most frequently asked questions you've had and putting it into a workflow, and then putting that on a bot, and putting it on your Facebook page. And it answers all these questions. So that by the time that it can't answer the question, it gives them a direct pipeline to the most applicable person that's high enough up that can solve the most eminent problem that they have. Google and Apple, they open up their programs when it comes to voice activation and so forth. Amazon Echo, we already talked about. Microsoft is fine. The one other one I want to go to is this. Anybody work with Facebook advertisement, dynamic ads for travel yet? How many times have you seen an ad that says rates starting at $1.99? And you click on it, and they ain't no $1.99 rate. If it was 1 on a bad day. Everything you see there is dynamic. They know if you're a Marriott Rewards member to even show that aspect. If the rate is 109 being shown, that when you click it, there is a 109 rate available. The scary part of this, they actually are getting better at knowing what dates you're interested in. But all of this is a dynamic ad in Facebook. So that when it shows, it is legitimately offering that date, that rate, at that hotel for you. Here's how the spectrum has changed. You're faced with 1,001 choices. Your marketing people are faced with 1,001 choices. In 2011, this was called the MarTech 500. And these were all the industry softwares and so forth available to be used for, and you really can't read them, but SEO and all the rest of the stuff. This is this year. Wow. It's called the MarTech 5000. All of these things are trying to fill the same space of need that they've had before, but they're more robust, more fragmented. I told you I wanted to get to GDPR real quick. This is it. GDPR is meant because marketers don't know how to control themselves. If you can't answer if you're GDPR compliant, you need to. And it won't be the European Union that chases you down first. It'll be your legal team and your insurance company that wants you there first. And it's already happening. The insurance company is going to recall and say, hey, you're GDPR compliant, right? And the legal team's going, I don't know, let's call the hotel. And the GM's going to go, hey, you're GDPR compliant, right? And they're going to go to IT, right? I don't know. Boom. Guess what? Your insurance is going to cover for you right now. And the penalty for violation is either $20 million or 5% of your gross receipted sales. So there's teeth to it. This, which we can't get to, is Google talking to you. This is the one screen I want to show real quick. I know we're supposed to end it up in this. If you're not using micro-influencers, you should be. What are micro-influencers? There's not the Kardashians or anybody like that. This is people that have a following on a social platform that they can translate what you need into what they can project to their audience. And it's very specific. You just don't say, come on, it's not a fan trip, it's not a freebie, it's a contract. And you identify what it is you want specifically from them. But you segment out by business cycle the demographics, your digital avatars of people that you want into your hotels. And then you chase down the influencers that talk to those audiences. Serious lift. I'll give you an example. I have 3 clients in New York. There is not a room to be sold in those 3 hotels now until October 26th in New York's market. Because we identified audiences ahead of our business cycle. I'm not taking credit for it, there's a lot more than just that added. But that was a huge bump in what was happening with our marketing. when we started targeting micro-influencers to the demographics of the people we were coming in business cycle with enough lead time to influence the people in their purchase cycle, that's magic. You start putting those things together, and only you as revenue managers know that stuff. You know what your business cycle is. You know what your cycle, what you're doing. So when you collaborate with your marketing team and talk about those KPIs, talk about those direct influences that you have, that's the kind of stuff that you can really begin to put an effect on. Gmail versus non-Gmail, huge thing with Gmail. We make jokes about it, but you can really be very amazing in targeting Google versus Gmail versus non-Gmail. And Google Tours, I just want to give one quick example. Sorry, I'm going past my point. But, so I go back to the screen. Over here, I want to show you something. This is me. I'm a level 6 tour guide. What does that mean? Well, I don't know a whole lot of it. I take 360 pictures. I like taking 360 pictures. I post 360 pictures on Google for them. It goes into Google Maps. As a matter of fact, you can make an entire Google map of your hotel for free, with little arrows that make it go to the next little bubble, next little bubble, next little bubble. I want you to look at these Highborn Park. I took that as a win. I was just having to be in the park and get a 360 picture. That's indicative. 161,000 people saw my picture. That is literally free advertising when I've done it in front of hotels and stuff with traffic. That people will go and look in my picture that I took wherever I was, where I posted it. In your ballroom, when it was sitting ready for a beautiful wedding, in your common area, whatever you want to show off. You can put it into Google Maps, it'll list it in there, people can find it, discover it, and by the thousands, they will look at it. And with that, I think I ran out of all the time in the world, but I'm going to go back to the slide deck so we have some closing slides. Oh, God, we didn't go through the challenge. Dang it, I hate that. 2 minutes? Anybody got an early problem? I got 2 minutes to solve an early problem. All right, anybody have an early problem? Let's try this. Come on, you can't tell me you're 100% occupancy in the world's beautiful place. Come on, bad problem. Group loss, transient drop, refurb, competitive set change.
Someone's got to have one.
Somebody's got to have a problem.
This is fun.
Actually, it is. If somebody has a problem.
Is everything perfect?
Is everything perfect in Las Vegas? Is that what it is? You guys are just happy and everything's good? There's no problem? You don't have any competitors?
Loren, can you give a high-level example so they know that we're not... Oh, we got... Hey, we got one.
All right.
This is an obvious one, right?
Okay.
So, rebranding Monte Carlo to Park MGM.
Okay, rebranding.
Rebranding.
Got a few questions.
Yep.
Is the branding going up or going down?
Up.
Okay. ADR and everything else going up? Inventory going up or just...
Hopefully.
Yeah. The anticipation is the ADR will be going up, correct? And the refurb is an upskill, it's an improvement into it's coming back to life and so forth and so on. Any other expansion other than just the room of refurbs and so forth? There's an expansion of conference space and everything else?
Every square inch remodel.
Okay.
Including, expanded conference rooms, F&B, everything.
Okay.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
all of it, yeah.
So let me ask also too, are you coming new to market or are you really going to present yourself as the new and improved?
New and improved?
New and improved, okay? With the new and improved, your comp set that you're against.
I know it's new, like.
Well,
You see Monte Carlo. Yeah, I mean.
it's existing, but it's
Right,
all
but-
new.
For those who may not know, but for me, for instance,
Right.
not knowing what you were to what you're becoming,
Right.
you're keeping yourself attached to the old you. No, you're letting the old you go.
Yes.
And you're going to the new you.
We renamed the property.
So everything's changed. Whatever was is gone, whatever new has happened.
Yes.
Some other things I would ask. Have you cut off, or excuse me, with the transition, do you plan on cutting off all of your reviews that you have had and all of the platforms that you had previous to that?
Yes.
Okay. First thing I would say to do is what's called the golden 50. Everybody has to go through this. Your first 50 reviews, especially on TripAdvisor, have to be pristine. Pristine. Which will immediately put you into the 4 or 5 categories. Which means immediately you go into the top, other than its first layer, second layer, on the page bowl. That immediately improves your start capabilities because that allows you to maintain your ADR that you're hoping to attain to, which I'm sure is improving enough to compensate for the cost of having done all this. Your strategy of your conference space. Does this put you into a different category in the market than you were before?
Yes.
Okay? With that, I'm assuming that your comp set also changes with that when it comes to this.
Yes.
Have you looked at what your comp set, marketing-wise, is currently doing? In the sense of online. I'm going to keep this all to online right now. Because one of the first things is, one again, not to reinvent a wheel. When I go into a new market, I will steal every good idea I can from anybody that's doing it right. And I'm going to find out how lazy they are and what they're doing. And then I'm going to do it better than them, and then find out what they're not doing right, and make sure that I show up for that. In keywords, when you're looking at trying to place yourself in SEO, the content you're developing for your website, do not try to be everything to everybody because you don't have the ranking and placement for it, since you're abandoning everything you previously did. You're going to have to reestablish what you're doing. And I don't want to come off as sounding authoritative, I'm just trying to make it short for us. When you create your content, create it only based on the previous history traffic that you had of your top 10 pages of use, because that's all people were using for you before. Only introduce your new product pages of content associated with what you would like to premiere, only if you can sustain what you're presenting them to. Because your competitors, knowing what you're doing, are going to, if they're good, compensate for what you're bringing new to market, because you're the shiny penny. So that's going to last you a total of 90 days if, and depending upon business cycle, what you're looking for at the time that it rolls into market, it might even be shorter because holiday might cut that down, time of year, whatever. I'm imagining you're optimizing your release to market as being the most optimum business cycle curve that you could do, and not just ownership's anticipation trying to get to market as fast as possible so they can start making money again, which is always a struggle. But in the process, I would make sure that you do not attack the primary markets first. It's already too dense of a space, it's already too costly and ineffective. Look at all your secondary and tertiary market that has come historically. Look at it from the DMA's perspective as to what other markets are secondary markets to you, because your primary competition isn't featuring those. They're not chasing those first. You need heads and beds, you need occupancy, you need relevancy, and you need high rankings. So if you look at the secondary markets, entice that availability. Now, is there a membership and loyalty reward program you have in place? Users that come to the hotel? I did this at one hotel. I don't know if it's a recognition worth at the scale that you're looking at doing. I gave them the second best membership to anybody that came from a particular channel, like especially OTAs. I would offer to them here, here's the rationale. We usually do loyalty programs with a carrot on a stick mentality that says if you show your worth to me, I might give you a free bottle of water at the end of the year and upgrade you to a different room maybe. Instead, let me give you what I'm good at. And if you like it, you're going to want to keep coming back to keep it. So it's a reverse to the mentality. Give it to them for the year. Let them appreciate and do it, because they're going to turn into advocates. Is what you need is you need people to begin to talk about you being the destination rather than just being another place to go. So if you give them that incentive through a channel that you know is, whatever channel you choose. I just say OTAs because it's really a good channel to really leverage because they're pretty anonymous when it comes to their interests. Then you can solicit their communication. There's a lot of social consumer advocacy platforms now that if you get the buzz and the talk, it's about getting in front of your competitors, not because you're better than them, it's just because people are talking about you. And so, I'm not trying to be any particular supplement, but things like FlipTube, things that create consumer advocacy conversations that are outside the realm of TripAdvisor, what have you, and TripAdvisor, any of those consumer platforms. And I would dedicate a social consumer advocacy person that is highly responsive, constantly giving feedback, good and bad, perpetually in every social platform. Because if you lose that conversation, no matter the product to market, no matter the comp set, you're going to lose the margin. That's about all I can fit in about 5 minutes. Anybody else have anything? I'm blabbering, but is there something else that you guys would recommend? I mean, from a revenue management point of view, there's a strategy as to your great placement and so forth, and comp set analysis. But is there anything else that you can think from unless you don't want to give it to them?
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Don't want to help them too much. Okay. Obviously, I got too many tabs to show and too much other stuff. I'm going to go back to the slide presentation because I think we're going to use it for the closing aspect of it. Thank you for letting me go all over the place with this stuff. Hopefully, you have a better sense of how marketing and revenue management can work together. Some of the resources that are in marketing that you may or may not have known about before, that you can ask about. But certainly, the worst thing you can do is to not try to cross that bridge and get the two together. So please make the effort for it. Thank you very much for the time you jump on.
Good job, Loren. Even though you were a little long, it was worth it. It was great.
I'm going to put you on your meeting part. Video? Oh, no, I don't think it's around. I'll push the button for you. How's that? No, just me. Oh, here, I'll sit right here.
All right, so closing, we have a raffle to do, so we're gonna go right to that right away, all right? So, would Alice and Ginny please come up?
So you, in your badges, will have a white ticket.
And what are they gonna get for the white ticket?
So we have 5 pairs of Gypsy King tickets for the winner.